Hello, I'm Michael Burke. Every year, unclaimed estates worth millions of pounds are handed over to long-lost relatives. For some people, it means a knock on the door they'll never forget.
To find that you're part of an inheritance is quite a shock.
But I didn't think it was 1.3 million.
The heir hunters use genealogy to comb Britain with skilled detective work, searching for recipients of unexpected windfalls. Almost every day, extraordinary news comes out of the blue.
Suddenly to be thrust into this new family, it's been a real roller coaster of a ride, it really has.
I feel very proud of my father. He went through such a lot to give us what we've got today.
You never know when they might come knocking at your door. At probate genealogy firm Finders International, a new list of unclaimed estates has been released. The team have taken a chance on a case with a very tricky name. Suzanne, what made this particular case such a gamble?
I mean, it was such a gamble given the surname. So it was Richard Thomas Evans. Now that surname's so common.
It must be one of the most common surnames in the country. So what kind of problems does that give you?
So it gives us problems such as, you know, we might have to order lots and lots of certificates to work out, you know, which Evans family is correct, given that
you could go herring off after all sorts of Evanses and they turn out not to be the right one.
Exactly.
What did you know about him?
So we know that he passed away in a care home in Tewkesbury in Gloucestershire. His previous property was actually sold for around 157,000. So there was potential that he owned that property before he went into the care home, and he had money in the bank.
So the possibility of a hefty estate, by anybody's standards, to divide up amongst the heirs, so it's a balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, you've got to weigh up the potential hassle with the potential rewards for the heirs and indeed for you. But at the end of the day, it is a gamble, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
A property sale could mean a considerable estate. But with other firms biting at their heels, case manager Suzanne needs to find potential heirs quickly. So she scours the birth and marriage indexes to establish Richard's immediate family line.
I don't think he's married. With the surname Evans, it's really, really difficult to pick up. But searching in both Herefordshire and Gloucestershire, where he was born and died, I can't see anything obvious. I've also found that his parents were Richard and Mabel Evelyn Chadfield, and he's an only child. So let's look at what we do know. Could these facts throw any light on potential heirs? Richard Thomas Evans was born in the village of Ighton near Leominster. The only child of a marriage between Richard Evans Sr. and Mabel Evelyn Chadfield. He was a lifelong bachelor and died in June 2017 in Tewkesbury, Gloucestershire. The care home where Richard Evans spent a brief time before he died was unable to provide further information on any family. It seems he was also a mystery to residents in the street where he used to live.
It's friendly enough. You sort of see people, same people several times and that, but other than that, it's one of these places where, unfortunately, these days people keep themselves to themselves.
The townsfolk of Tewkesbury may not recall Richard, but think it likely he would have had ties to the area.
Well, because a lot of people were born here, that means their families are here. So I know lots of people, that whole generations live in Tewkesbury.
The team now knew that Richard wasn't born in Tewkesbury, but a village 40-odd miles away in the neighbouring county of Herefordshire. So the question was, would any family members have moved with him? Would any still be found in the area? Armed with the valuable information that Richard had no offspring, spouse or siblings to pass his wealth onto, the search now shifts to finding aunts and uncles. This could mean cousins and potential heirs. But the team are already facing a hurdle, the deceased's extremely common family name.
The surname will probably prove quite difficult, given that It's in the area of sort of Gloucestershire, Herefordshire, which is right next to Wales. And Evans' surname is really prevalent in Wales.
Facing the formidable challenge of the surname Evans in a search area bordering Wales, Suzanne calls for reinforcements, Camilla and Ryan, to help on her paternal search.
So it should be okay if it's just in that area.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And I'm hoping they have middle names. So.
Okay, what's the dad? He's a carpenter.
Okay, well if
Right, let's give it a go.
Holly is put to work tracing the tree of the deceased's mother, Mabel Evelyn Chadfield.
The Chadfield name is quite easy to research.
The task, it's hoped, will be less troublesome. Suzanne scopes out the size of the task on the paternal tree as she determines just how many aunts and uncles the deceased may have on that side.
I'm looking into the census of Richard Evans, the deceased's father, and I can see that there's four children in 1911.
So it looks like there are 3 potential siblings of the deceased father, Richard Evans Sr. But Suzanne searches further back and finds an additional child.
So I found the missing sibling of the deceased's father, Gertrude Rebecca Evans, born in 1892.
Combing past census records unearths evidence that Richard Thomas's father, Richard Evans Sr., was one of 5. One sister died soon after birth, but the other siblings lived into adulthood.
Now I've got that information, I can start dividing it up amongst everyone so everyone can take a line.
Ryan gets to work on the line of one of the brothers of Richard's father, but the Evans surname is really hampering inquiries.
I'm looking into one of the paternal uncles. His name is Charles Edward Evans. He was born in 1901. Now, the Evans surname is obviously very difficult for us to research because we're looking at Herefordshire. Obviously, it is very close to Wales. Charles Edward Evans married a Doris Rees, which is a very Welsh surname as well.
An Evans and a Rees marrying close to the Welsh border. Ryan really has got his work cut out. Though there is one thing running in his favour.
So luckily the family seems to stay in the Leominster area, which is really helping us move a bit quicker with the research.
Staying in the area of the same small Herefordshire market town meant results from researching the local records.
We've got them on the 1939 register together. He's living with Doris and he is also living with his daughter Barbara. Barbara would have been a paternal cousin, but she's actually passed away.
A paternal cousin could well lead to living heirs. But Ryan's already tricky investigation comes up against yet another common Welsh surname.
She's married someone with the surname Jenkins, so we've got the surname Evans, we've got Rees, and we've got Jenkins as well. So now I'm just trying to find Barbara's children. It's a bit trickier because we're looking at anybody with the surname Jenkins with the mother's maiden name of Evans. There's obviously quite a few.
An Evans marrying a Jenkins. Could this search get any worse?
It's regarding the Jenkins and Evans family, and we'll try and see if you're fitting into the family tree we're looking into. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Hopeful that the search on Richard's mother, Mabel Evelyn Chadfield's line, will be much less arduous, the team consult the census records.
I found that there's 4 of them altogether on that side. So Mabel had 3 siblings, so 3 lines to then research into.
Just 3 maternal lines to follow. Mabel's sister Mildred Sarah and brothers Bertram Frank and Ernest Henry. So middle names, plus the very unusual surname of Chadfield to boot. This should be easy.
I've started with the line of Ernest Henry Chadfield.
A search of the birth and marriage records provides the team with expected quick results.
He married and had 3 children.
So far, so good. 3 maternal cousins, 3 leads to potential heirs. But investigations into these cousins' stems reveals much more than the team had hoped for.
Now I'm looking at Cecil Chadfield, who was a cousin of the deceased. He's now passed away, but he had 10 children. So what I'm doing at the moment is trying to locate all 10 of them.
10 offspring from a single cousin. This would surely mean living heirs. But with so many to chase and competitors on the case, it's a race against the clock to make contact.
But if I could leave my telephone number with you, then maybe she could give me a call back?
Holly now has a mission on the maternal search. On the much harder to research paternal side of Evans, Ryan thinks he's made a breakthrough.
We're looking for any descendants of a Barbara Winifred Jenkins.
He's on the phone to the daughter of a potential heir.
Do you recognise that name at all? No? Okay, because I think we're dealing with the surnames Jenkins and Evans, and I think they were your mum's parents' names. Your mum was called Carol, yeah? No? Maybe, I think that maybe she's not related.
Unfortunately, with the much trickier surnames of Evans and Jenkins, it's turned out to be a dead end.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Cheers, luck. Bye-bye.
It can be quite frustrating when doing research into a case and finally getting down to contacting those heirs, and you realise you've got the completely wrong person. We need to work out exactly where we've gone wrong and take it from there.
Time-consuming wrong turns on the paternal search.
Kindly give me a call back, either just to confirm or let us know that you're not correct.
A multitude of unresponsive leads on the maternal side.
I found her and left a message.
Will the team be able to make contact with living heirs to Richard Evans' estate of almost £160,000? Or will the competition beat them to it?
It does look like it will probably be quite a long day.
When the heir hunters start to track down the rightful heirs to an estate, their research can lead to unexpected discoveries. And what they unearth can have emotional outcomes for everyone involved. In London, genealogy and probate research firm Fraser & Fraser were tackling a brand new case, recently published on the government's list of unclaimed estates.
The case of Wallace Pilmoor came to us through the government legal department. It was released one morning, which means we need to get started on it relatively quickly because we know we're going to have competition.
The case is there for everybody. Competitors are likely to be hot on their heels chasing leads. So the team dispatch a travelling researcher to do some detective work around Wallace Pilmoor's Yorkshire home.
It appeared that the deceased was residing in a local authority home. A neighbour was able to tell us that she thought he was an accountant. The neighbours quickly said that Mr. Pilmoor wasn't much of a spender during his life, which led us to believe he could well have some form of an estate.
Wallace Pilmoor was a retired accountant and lifelong Yorkshireman who died in December 2016, aged 83, leaving no will. Living out his days in the tight-knit surroundings of Osbaldwick parish, news of his death quickly spread.
Well, unfortunately, we did hear about Wallace passing away. I didn't unfortunately know him, but I heard the news. It's a sad loss.
Other neighbours confirmed that Wallace didn't seem to have any friends in the area, but they did know of an older sister and her son who he'd once lived with. But since losing both, he'd lived alone.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, bye.
They knew that he had a sister who passed away and that her property became his. We believe that he may well have saved the funds that he received from his sister's estate.
Hey Joe, do you mind looking at this case with me?
This all hinted at a potentially large value estate. The team urgently needed to corroborate the local hearsay.
I found that he did actually have an older sister called Dorothy, who was born in 1921, and we found that she actually did get married to a Mr. Chapman and had one son called Stephen. She passed away in 2004, and her son also passed away in 2005.
So it was true. Wallace's sister and nephew had both died within a year, leaving him alone and the sole beneficiary of the estate. A search of his accounts revealed it to be substantial.
We've come to the point that we believe it's worth around £340,000.
This was a highly valuable case, but the risk now was with no near kin or will. If left unclaimed, Wallace's wealth would end up in the hands of the government.
If we couldn't find any heirs, the case would be closed.
Wallace's close family all gone, the team now needed to go back a generation in their hunt for heirs.
That's lovely. Thank you.
Sinead searched the birth and marriage indexes, soon establishing the first branches of Wallace's family tree. Wallace's father, James Albert Pilmoor, and mother, Annie Elizabeth Nicholson, had married in York in 1921. The marriage certificate showed his father had worked in the local chocolate factory. A cocoa business was first founded in York in the 18th century and acquired by the Rowntree family in 1862. Inspired by their Quaker beliefs, the Rowntrees sought to combine business with social improvements. So by the time Wallace's father was employed in the cocoa works in the 20th century, it had become a desirable workplace.
I think you could say that Rowntrees were probably the most innovative employers at the time in the realms of social welfare. They interviewed over 70,000 people in York to try and work out what caused poverty. They worked out that it was caused by a combination of poor housing that would make people ill. Being ill meant that you would fall into the poverty trap. So they calculated the first ever living wage. They created a village where you could live a healthier, happier life, but in affordable accommodation. And they tried to help any employees who were sick. So they had a doctor and a dentist and a nurse.
Wallace's father, James Pilmoor, received good pay and conditions to help raise the family. Wallace's sister, Dorothy, followed in her father's footsteps.
It's very, very common for an entire family, generation after generation, to work at our factory. And we have lots of employees who have had generation after generation working on the same site.
So, 2 generations working for Rowntrees. It's likely that Wallace's family benefited from the social welfare outlook of this local York employer, which could in part explain his acquired wealth. Now the team had to find heirs.
We're looking at his father's side of the family. Now, looking at his parents' marriage certificate, we know that Wallace's grandfather was also called Wallace Pilmoor.
It seemed Wallace was named after his paternal grandfather. A search of the indexes revealed Wallace Sr. married a Maud Jagger. But would Grandad Wallace and Maud have had children in addition to Wallace's father James? Paternal siblings would mean aunts and uncles and leads to heirs.
So James was one of 6. He had a sister called Mary Ellen, a brother called Herbert Harry, another sister called Lily, a brother called Frederick, and then the youngest of the family was Elsie.
Great news. 5 aunts and uncles meant 5 solid leads to potential heirs for Wallace's high-value £340,000 estate. However, the records of the uncles quickly revealed some bad news.
Both Herbert and Frederick die without getting married or having any children.
Now, all hope was pinned on the 3 sisters. OK, Sinead, it must have looked as if you had plenty of leads on the paternal side. You've got 2 uncles, 3 aunts, but by this time you'd already found out that 2 uncles had no descendants, so you're down to the 3 aunts. So talk me through it. What happened?
So what we found out is that Mary Ellen Pilmoor...
Oh, yes, this is the marriage record, isn't it?
Yes,
she
it
married
is.
Richard Woods.
Yes, on the 29th of June 1910, when she was 21 years old.
Righto. Did they have any children?
They did. They had 1 son, Basil.
Oh, there he is. Yep. Did he get married?
He did. He married...
Yep, Annie Pearson. Any children?
Unfortunately not, so that means this stem has actually died off.
So 3 down, 2 to go. The next aunt, what about her?
So Elsie married a Walter Parker, and they did actually have
the child, Neville Parker here.
Yes, he's born in 1929 in York.
So, well, did he get married? Did he have children?
He didn't, unfortunately, and as you can see by his death certificate here, he died in 1997, and his death is registered by the deceased himself, Wallace.
By Wallace Pilmoor. He actually registered the death.
Yep.
But no descendants then either.
No descendants from that time either.
He had 5 aunts and uncles, 4 of whom had no descendants at all, Which means you're down to the last aunt.
Yep, we're down to Lily, and if she doesn't have any children, that means that the paternal side of the family has died off.
So now there was just one single stem left on the paternal side. Would Aunt Lily's line lead to heirs, or would all remaining hope pass to Wallace's maternal family? The chance of finding heirs to Wallace's £340,000 wealth was fading fast.
We really need to find some heirs, but they were all dying out.
Every year in Britain, thousands of ordinary people get an unexpected knock on the door from heir hunters.
I found that amazing, that I had that side of the family that I didn't know existed.
Over the years, the heir hunters have given fortunes to the heirs that they find. As well as the unexpected windfalls, they also reunite relatives.
A little bit shocked to find out that I had a long-lost relative.
There are still hundreds of estates left unclaimed. Listen carefully for the names. If you recognise yours, then one of them could rightfully belong to you. Today we've got details of 2 estates on the Government Legal Department's unclaimed estates list. The first is of Joan Barbara Schofield, who passed away in Lincoln on the 22nd of August 1996, aged 73. Her maiden name was Steele. Could you be related to Joan? If so, the heir hunters would like to hear from you. The next case is of Hilda May Smallwood. She died in Richmond-upon-Thames, London, aged 86 in 1992. She was born in Jamaica and her maiden name was Wright. Could you be a relative of Hilda? If so, the windfall could be coming your way. In London, the Finders team are on the hunt for heirs of Richard Thomas Evans, a bachelor who recently died in Tewkesbury, Gloucestershire, with no known next of kin. With competitors chasing the same leads, case manager Suzanne knows it's a race to reach and sign heirs before their rivals.
What I've done is I've split up the work amongst the team. With any luck, we'll be able to contact an heir as soon as possible.
Research has uncovered a recent sale of the deceased's former home, the proceeds from which could well form the value of any estate.
It could potentially be worth about £157,000.
Tracking down the deceased family has been made much harder, with popular surnames like Evans leading to dead ends.
It's going to be a tricky surname to work with.
His mother's side of Mabel Chatfield is proving to be a problem too, with large numbers of offspring creating a staggering workload.
There's a cousin that has 10 children, so I think it's going to be quite a big family.
The number of them is making it difficult to get hold of them all at once.
The team urgently need to make contact with their first heirs from this mammoth haul of leads on the maternal Uncle Ernest's line.
And we're currently looking into the Chatfield family tree, which I believe might have been your mother's maiden name.
Not wanting to risk being beaten to any remaining maternal heirs by the competition, Suzanne gets on the trail of the deceased's other maternal uncle, Bertram Frank.
So this is the line of Bertram Frank Chatfield. He's a maternal uncle of the deceased.
Helped out by the unusual surname of Chatfield, a search soon reveals a marriage between Frank and a Lucy May Morgan in 1915. Now, to find any children.
I'm doing a birth search between Chatfield and Morgan. There's actually only 2 that have come up in the whole of the English records. So there's Dennis in 1916 and Mary Kay in 1920.
These 2 maternal cousins of Richard Thomas Evans, the deceased, could well provide living heirs on this search, if they have descendants.
He dies as a bachelor.
Suzanne starts investigating the older child, Dennis.
I can't find any marriages. Nothing's coming up.
No marriage could mean no heirs, but Suzanne needs to be sure.
What I'm going to do is check the probate registers and see if he left a will.
Suzanne's belt and braces research uncovers an unwelcome piece of news.
It looks as though his whole estate passes up to his mother in 1946, just after the Second World War.
Like many men of his age, Richard's cousin Dennis found himself fighting for Britain after war with Germany was declared in 1939.
He fought in North Africa. He would have fought at El Alamein in Egypt and likely all the way through Libya as far as Tunisia.
Returning home, these men felt a sense of euphoria and a burning wish to see the values they'd risked their lives for put into play.
The experience of fighting and the experience of danger politicised many soldiers. They loved the idea of a better Britain, of a new Jerusalem. And in 1942, something called the Beveridge Report was produced, which lay out the blueprint for the welfare state, the NHS. And the soldiers, they thought it was the best thing going. This was what they wanted to fight for, a new Britain.
But cousin Dennis didn't long outlive the war.
Dennis Chatfield returns to a United Kingdom that is ready for change, that is excited about the future. And he died in a motorbike accident on the 18th of October, 1946. He doesn't get to be part of that future, which is incredibly sad.
Dennis never got to live in post-war Britain. He was survived by a younger sister, Mary.
So I've just found that Mary Kay Chatfield marries a Thomas Gilmore in the March quarter of 1942.
Did post-war peace bring its own baby boom to this particular Chatfield line?
I found 2 entries, both in Cheshire, for a Christopher C. Gilmore and a Denise E. C. Gilmore.
This is good news for the heir hunters. The deceased cousin Mary and her husband Thomas have a baby boy Christopher in 1950, and he's followed by a daughter Denise, born in 1955. At last, living heirs.
Do you possibly have any details to whereabouts they are?
Suzanne wastes no time tracking them down. Here they are, surviving descendants of Richard Thomas Evans' uncle, Bertram Frank.
Gosh, she looks really young there.
Brother and sister, Christopher and Denise.
Oh, it's just very strange. I didn't know my grandfather had 2 sisters and 2 brothers. I didn't even know.
I'd never heard of Richard Evans. All I knew about my grandfather was he was a farmer and he was from Derbyshire.
Not only were they given the news that they're due a share of an estate left by an unknown relative, but they're now part of a much larger family than they'd ever imagined.
We'd always been a small family, a small unit, so I was absolutely astonished. It's just nice to have such a big family after being just a brother and sister.
Hopefully we'll have some reunions.
For Denise in particular, it's like all her Christmases have come at once.
I know it sounds really stupid at 62, but I just feel like a kid that's waiting for Santa. That's a nice one of my mum and dad. I love this photograph.
In the finder's office, they're certainly pleased. A few basic bits of information about the deceased Richard Thomas Evans has turned into a very successful case with a large number of heirs.
At the end, there was 15 heirs on the maternal side and 15 heirs on the paternal side, equaling a total of 30 heirs overall. We managed to locate everyone very quickly. We managed to stay ahead of the competition, and overall it showed how well we worked as a team together.
As the team completed the family tree, news on the assets from the sale of the deceased's former home came in. The property had sold for £157,000. But unfortunately, it turned out that Richard Thomas Evans was not the legal owner, so this sum couldn't form part of the final inheritance. For heirs Denise and Christopher, the real value of Richard's legacy is something that money can't buy.
Your grandfather?
It's wonderful. We've got 30 relatives out there. I'm not bothered about the money.
Well, it's tracing your family tree back, not knowing your relatives. I had no idea I had any. No idea at all.
The money doesn't matter. It's not important. Family's important.
At genealogy and probate firm Fraser & Fraser, the team had established a high-value case with an estate worth £340,000. If they couldn't find heirs of the deceased Wallace Pilmoor, who'd lived alone since losing his sister, it would all be at risk.
We're just waiting for some certificates to come through. Okay, brilliant.
On the paternal side, many relatives had died without children. Now all hope was pinned to the maternal side of the family.
So we looked at Wallace's mother's side of the family, Annie. Parents were Thomas Nicholson and Mary Jane Jackson.
The question was, would Annie have siblings, giving Wallace potential aunts and uncles and leads to heirs?
Annie was one of 5 children, and her siblings were Thomas, Emma, Richard and William.
This is the lifeline the team need. Wallace's mother Annie was one of 5, meaning 4 new leads to heirs.
Obviously, we want the certificate sent in priority.
But research into the maternal uncles soon painted the same sorry picture that the team had faced on the paternal tree.
Thomas died at the age of 9, and Richard died as a bachelor in 1927.
Things were not looking good. They now desperately needed Annie's only sister Emma to provide a link to heirs.
Emma Caroline Nicholson married a Fred Ringrose.
Got a big one.
And they had 10 children.
The discovery that Annie's sister Emma had married in York in 1906 and gone on to have no fewer than 10 children, each first cousins to Wallace, was the lifeline the team needed. Plus, Emma's husband's unusual surname of Ringrose promised to aid the team with their inquiries. The team noted at the time of marriage he'd also worked at the Rowntree, York chocolate factory.
So we had the name of Ringrose, which was quite a strange one, which none of us had ever come across. We were quite lucky in that sense.
The good fortune was not to last. Sometime between marriage and the birth of their first child, Fred's employment at the benevolent Rowntree firm ceased, and a series of tragedies befell the Ringrose children.
3 of them, Emma G, Lily and Betty, all die as children.
Maybe it was because the family had fallen on hard times. Baby Emma died of malnutrition at 3 months old. Common childhood diseases struck down Lily and Betty.
Lily, she passed away at 18 months old and she had measles, and Betty passed away from having whooping cough, which turned into pneumonia at the age of 28 days.
Losing 3 of her babies would have been a terrible blow to Wallace's Aunt Emma. But in the first decades of the 20th century, with no welfare state or national health service to turn to, it wasn't unusual.
Infant mortality in the first part of the 20th century, it was still very high compared to the levels of mortality in a country like Britain today. Children would have been vulnerable to a range of infectious diseases, diphtheria, whooping cough, also tuberculosis, measles infection. And there was very little treatment available, and really vaccines only became widely available after the NHS started in 1948. For children living in poverty in the 1920s, those children would also have been particularly vulnerable to these kind of illnesses because they didn't have good general health.
Aunt Emma had lost 3 of her 10 children as babes in arms.
It's not very nice to see a baby's passed away at the age of 28 days. It's quite sad, really.
The team hoped that Emma's surviving children, who would have been Wallace's cousins, had gone on to have children of their own. All would be in line to inherit. Sinead turned her investigations to another of Emma's daughters, Annie.
Annie Elizabeth Ringrose is one of Emma Caroline Nicholson's children. Now, she married a David Norman William Dickens in 1934 in York. She has 6 children: Dorothy, Evelyn, Desmond, Norman, Jean and Joan.
So one of Wallace's cousins had married and had children of her own, all potential heirs to his estate. But like her mother Emma, Annie's own family was beset with tragedy.
Annie had 2 twins by the name of Desmond and Norman, and they actually passed away at 45 minutes old of prematurity. Her youngest child, Joan, passed away at 5 hours old, same cause of death, prematurity. Annie herself passed away the same year as she had her youngest child, Joan, in 1940, leaving David with their children.
This is awful, isn't it, Sinead? I mean, so many children and infants dying, generation after generation. Then Annie herself dies, leaving 3 children and a widower.
Yeah, and that's not the worst thing about it. I mean, here's Annie's death certificate, if you want to read the cause of death. Septicemia,
secondary to abortion, caused by outside interference by some person or persons unknown. Not often you'd see that on a death certificate.
It's actually the first time I've ever seen an abortion listed on a death certificate.
What went through your mind when you read that?
I was shocked that this poor woman had to go through that. I mean, there was also an inquest into her death 2 days later, obviously, because
abortion was a crime, of course, in those days. So, I mean, this poor woman, how desperate must she have been? I mean, she had 3 living children. She'd had twins who had died shortly after birth. Then she'd had this abortion from which she dies, as well as the infant, and she's still only 25.
she must have been very desperate. 6 pregnancies at the age of 25, I can't imagine it.
Abortion was still illegal in York and the rest of England when 25-year-old Annie Ringrose sought to end a pregnancy, her 5th in as many years, in 1940.
In the early part of the 20th century, women's access to family planning, to contraception, was still relatively limited. So one of the fears for women would be unwanted pregnancies. And at that time, abortion was illegal. Abortions would have been performed by what we now what we call backstreet abortionists, illegal abortion providers that women would have found out about really through word of mouth. Women would have been aware of the dangers, and so it would have been something that women would not approach without a great deal of fear and trepidation. So you can imagine a picture where women were actually pretty desperate.
We can only speculate about why Wallace's cousin Annie felt compelled to take such desperate measures. Now her husband David was left alone with 3 young children.
It would appear that David couldn't cope with having such young children at that time, and 2 of the children were actually adopted out of the family.
This changed the children's legal connection with the family.
Evelyn and Jean are both 4 and 2, and they are adopted out of the family and therefore no longer entitled as heirs to Wallace's estate.
As a single father in 1940, David also sought help with his one remaining child, Dorothy.
So Dorothy was the eldest of Annie and David's children. She was 6 years old when her mother passed away, and we found out through research that actually Dorothy was brought up by David's parents.
As this was an informal arrangement, Dorothy is still counted as part of Wallace's family line. So it's this stem the team now focused their research for heirs on.
We have found a marriage certificate for Dorothy saying that she marries a Peter Flintoff in October of 1953 in York.
This is good news, a direct blood relative that could lead the team to heirs, and once again living in the city of York. If Dorothy and Peter had children, they would be in line to inherit.
She said she wasn't that surprised that he's died young.
Sinead searched the indexes and hoped for the best.
So because we found that Dorothy had got married, we were then able to see if she had any children, and she did. She had 3 children, Carol, Kevin and Nigel, which means we now had heirs on this case.
It had been an emotional journey, but finally, after all their hard work, the team had the result that they'd been hoping for. And here they are, the heirs. Dorothy's 2 sons and Wallace's first cousins twice removed, Kevin and Nigel Flintoff. News that they were to inherit a share of a £340,000 estate from a relative they'd never even heard of left them stunned.
It was a big shock, really.
Yeah, it was. As regards Wallace Pilmoor, I didn't know of him myself.
We are going to get some inheritance paid to us. It's a lovely feeling. It's nice to find out more about where it's coming from. But yeah, it's, you know, out of the blue, it just doesn't happen to me.
It's a successful conclusion for the heir hunters, who continued their search, turning up further beneficiaries.
So on the maternal side of the family tree, we had a total of 7 beneficiaries. On the paternal, we had 2 beneficiaries, meaning the total number of beneficiaries were 9. The family lived so close but didn't have any knowledge of extended family, so they lived very, very nearby in terms of living in the same town, and they had no knowledge of anyone else apart from themselves.
For heirs Nigel and Kevin, the news that Wallace had lived so close by was a surprise.
And I found out where he lived, and it's literally 10 minutes from my house where I live now. So if I'd have known about it beforehand, I could have visited him. I think Wallace would have been a lovely person to know.
1866.
As well as receiving a windfall, they now have a family tree that shows yet more relatives living nearby who they can reconnect with.
Looking at this, nearly all the families from York that we didn't know about.
So we've probably got a bigger family than what we think. And they're all in, well, looking at this, they're all in York.
We've got here.
And then I'm thinking, how close do they actually live to us when you look at this?
It's a chance to rekindle relationships. A legacy from Wallace. Tracking down the relatives of Wallace Pilmoor proved to be a real emotional roller coaster. While the search did uncover some pretty sad events, finding the rightful heirs for Wallace's estate did put branches of the family back in touch with each other, and that surely was a cause for celebration. So, where will the next case take the heir hunters? Perhaps the next search will put them on a path to your front door with news of an unexpected inheritance. Until next time, goodbye.